Yeah, I did a reading. I write children's books. I did a reading at their library, the Montclair Library. It's an amazing library, great librarians, really cool population came to the reading, the kids and parents, and I was very impressed with it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So maybe we'll start my question at the end of the helicopter here, but
Okay.
we'll start off just by, can you tell me your character's name and sort of recount the story a little bit from her perspective?
Okay. I was like, what is her name? I'm like, do I have a last name? I was like, oh, I do. Okay.
Let's give it one more second.
You're right. Circling.
Okay, I think we're good. Yeah, we're good. Okay.
Okay.
So, can you just tell me your character's name and the story from her perspective?
My character's name is Alice Howland, and the movie starts up around her 50th birthday, and she's with her family. She's been, married since she was in her early 20s. She has 3 adult children, and she's a psycholinguist and teaches at Columbia University, and starts noticing that she's forgetting things and having some sort of strange situations present themselves to her, and she doesn't know what it is, and in her exploration of it eventually finds out that she has early onset Alzheimer's disease.
And that is quite a swing as a character to go from an elite intellectual to someone suffering from Alzheimer's. It's like preparing for multiple characters in a way. How do you prepare for that, and
Well, I did as much research as I could. I mean, the thing is, for us as actors, there's so much of it happens in your head. It really happens with how you interpret this particular part. But when you're playing something that's based on fact, you have a real responsibility to do the research. And I had great resources. Honestly, I mean, really, really tremendous ones. The Alzheimer's Association was so helpful to me, and they directed me to initially several women who have been diagnosed with early onset, and I Skyped with them and to kind of get to know them. And then I met with an organization here in New York City where they have lots of support groups, and I talked to another group of women who were kind of in a weekly meeting and sort of a support group and stimulation learning group, and they talked to me about their experiences. I read a lot of books. I looked at a lot of movies, documentaries, and eventually went to an assisted living facility for people with memory loss.
And can you talk a little bit more specifically about some of your prep? I heard you really did a lot of research and became sort of almost the onset expert in a way, because you had even gone through testing.
Yes, I had a test. I went to Mount Sinai, and I had it's what they call the mini mental. It's just a sort of a shortened version of Alzheimer's testing, and it's pretty significant. It's very challenging and anxiety producing even. I mean, it certainly was for me, and I'm somebody who's not experiencing cognitive decline. So for the people who are going through that, who really are having some difficulty, I think it's a pretty emotional, very, very distressing situation. You're asked to repeat, long lists of words that don't really relate to one another, and then you repeat it a second time, and then you recall them the third time, and then you're given another list, and you're asked to recall those, and then you're told a story, and then you don't repeat the facts that you remember till the end of the session, and you go through doing number problems and lists of animals and words that begin with R, and it's pretty strenuous, mentally. It's a tough thing.
I'm sure I can pass it.
I know. I think everybody feels that way, and I was really interested in knowing kind of why, what each of the tests signified, and basically all of the tests refer to various locations in the brain. So you might find that someone does well in a certain kind of recall, but then it's not, great at specific categories. So that's where they can track where the decline is occurring.
Mm-hmm. And so, what is it that attracted you to this story and to this role?
Well, I like human stories. I mean, it's a pretty significant disease, Alzheimer's. I mean, it affects a large portion of the population, and more of us as we age. And because we are living longer, just as a group, it's going to affect more of us. And I mean, a very small percentage of people with Alzheimer's are people with early onset. I think it's 15%. But it was an interesting way to look at it, whereas this disease was something that I think people felt kind of ashamed of and felt that it was a natural condition of aging. This story really illuminates the fact that it's not. It's not a natural condition. It's a disease. It's a disease that doesn't have a cure. It doesn't really have anything that that really retards symptoms significantly. I mean, it can only the main drugs that they have sort of can control it a little bit, but basically the disease overtakes the medication, and it's just a matter of time. So back to why I was interested in it. It's really a story about identity, about who you are. Are you? I think we feel so much that we're a collection of our experiences and our emotions, and also our intellect. And so, who are you when you lose the things that you define yourself by? What's left? And I think that to me is a really compelling idea.
And can you talk a little bit about the rest of your family? Husband played by Alec Baldwin.
Honestly, I think the thing that's been so amazing for me about this project is the incredible talent that we've managed to attract. I never, ever, ever imagined that Alec Baldwin would play this role. I adore him. I just think he's wonderful, and I'm always hoping to do something with him. And we've been emailing about something, and I said, I have this this movie that I'm doing, and would you look at it? And the fact that he did it, he's such a wonderful actor, and he's got so much electricity and vitality as a person, as a human being, and as an actor, and he brings this huge life force to this role. So you really understand what this man is dealing with. I mean, his whole life has been with this woman, and he's in the middle of his career and of his life, and suddenly everything kind of comes to a dead stop. It's like, is he going to move forward? Is he going to stay? What's happening to his life? And anyway, Alec is just such a wonderful actor and a great person to be with, and he makes me laugh really hard, and I love being with him every day.
Well, is it a different? You've worked with him in sort of a comedic role,
We-
working in drama as opposed to a comedy?
I don't know. Oddly, I mean, yes and no. I have to say that I think that tone is not something that the pieces share, comedy and tragedy or whatever. But an actor being present for you, being kind of connecting to you, being aware, that's something you can kind of tell right away, no matter what genre you're in. And Alec is a very, very connected human being and actor. So it's been great.
And what about your daughters?
Yeah,
Kristen?
lovely. Kristen, believe it or not, I've known Kristen since she was 12. She was in a movie that my husband directed, and she's she's always been a wonderful actress, and it's wonderful to work with her as an adult and to see all the tremendous emotion and nuance that she brings to the part. How connected she is to it, how connected she is to me as another actor and as a person playing her parent. The scenes that we have together are pretty delicate because they're women who are having a tough time in their relationship because her mother wants her to go to college and she doesn't want to go to college, so they have different agendas, and I think their basic misunderstanding of the other one's agenda too sort of leads to a little bit of a standoff, and yet you constantly see Kristen's huge emotional life. Through all of this, you see who she is, this character, who she is as a person, how much she cares, how much kind of love she carries for her mother. It's really beautiful.
And how do you create that sort of familiarity and authenticity of a mother-daughter relationship with both her and with Kate?
Well, I think the one thing that we all have in common is that we all are daughters. I'm the only one of them that's a mother so far. But I think that's a pretty significant bond, and it's something that we're all very familiar with. And so you draw on that, I suppose. And Kate has also been absolutely lovely. It's really just such a beautiful girl, and so fun to be with, and so lovely in this part. I'm really blessed to have this group of people around me.
Cool. Do you want to share any specifics about the different stages of this and how you
Sure.
represent that? So, it's such an internal thing that's happening.
Yeah, there are kind of signifiers along the way, but one of the things about Alzheimer's disease is how varied it is from person to person. So there are no right and wrong things. Everyone's affected somewhat differently. What was interesting to me is that I think there's a large assumption that the disease primarily affects memory, and it's not always just memory. It's their kind of sensory things that your brain controls and affect you. You know, spatial relationships, not understanding whether or not a whole, you know, seeing that a shadow and saying that it might be thinking it's a hole, not understanding how to open a door, whether it goes in or out, and literally not knowing how things work, or looking at an object and not knowing what it is. So there's that, as well as the memory loss and the aphasia, not being able to speak, not being able to express yourself. A couple of the women I spoke to were very affected by that, having been, one of them was saying I was a very articulate person. It's very difficult for me to be in a situation where I am not able to articulate my feelings and my thoughts. And it makes me feel like people think that I'm stupid, but I simply can't, you know, I'm not able to do it. People describe sometimes seeing the word like hanging in front of their face, but not being able to say it. It's very frustrating. I think people with the disease have a lot of anxiety, and they feel very isolated because suddenly they're not able to participate in things that they've, you know, work, for example, that usually stops almost immediately for people after they're diagnosed because people aren't able to fulfill the duties that they were doing before. So there was that, and then, you know, I think the interesting thing too is that once you get used to a certain level of cognitive function, often there'll be like another decline. You know, so someone for a couple of years will be doing very well and have kind of memory aids and assistance that will get them through whatever they're getting through, but then there'll be another drop. There'll be something else they're not able to do. So we tried to be as accurate as possible with those things. I tried to be as specific as I could. I didn't want to personally represent things that I hadn't seen. So a lot of what I do in the movie was based on things that I had observed, you know, in the documentaries that I watched or in the people that I spoke to.
There's one person who someone had mentioned earlier today, Sandy.
Sandy, yeah, Sandy's great. Sandy lives in Minnesota, and she and I have been emailing quite a bit, and she was diagnosed with early onset at 45, and I think she's 48 or 49 now. And she's very articulate, really bright, very much an advocate for Alzheimer's work for the association. She ran an OR as a nurse. She was in the operating room, and started noticing problems when she wasn't able to utilize a fairly simple computer program for the OR. And was like, what's going on? She's been really instrumental in my research and in trying to understand, you know, how people feel with the disease. She said a wonderful thing in a speech she gave, where she said, you know that people with Alzheimer's are not suffering, they are struggling. And that was something that I noticed too. It's not like you can say someone is a victim of a disease, that they're victimized by it. One of the things that I have noticed with all the people I've spoken to is how hard they are working with and against the disease to be themselves. You know, I think the struggle for them is to try to find themselves in it as much as possible.
And what would you like people to take away from the film?
That's always a tough one. I mean, because in so much as we want people to learn about Alzheimer's disease, it's also a movie about the human condition. You know, it's really about who are we to one another, what those relationships mean. You know, what are we doing here? You know, there's always that sense I think we all have of like moving forward very quickly, and I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to, you know, and then once I do this, I'll do this. And you think like, well, that's interesting, but it's all kind of a conceit. You know, we've made all this stuff up. Jobs and places to go, and you know, we really have no obligation in our lives, you'd like to think, except to be there for each other. And so I think in a way that's what this movie is ultimately about. It's like who are we to each other?
Cool.
Okay.
I think that covers just about it. Well,
Good. I was pretty garrulous, wasn't I?
It was great. But, the one thing, is that, she's a Columbia professor. New York kind of plays a role in it. Did that, how does that affect you? How is it shooting in New York?
It's great shooting in New York. I live here, so for me, the book is actually set in Boston, and she's a Harvard professor, but because I live in New York City, it was gonna behoove me to